Hello and welcome to Answer Everywhere. We're taking a look at Grafana. Have you ever wondered what the Grafana codebase is like? I have. And now we're taking a look at it. This is a request from a user. The user's name is, and it's Sarkar 26529. And it's Sarkar 26529. Made this request and made several other requests. We schedule requests based on donations to the channel. So if you want to make a request, you can do that. That's free. You can go on Discord is the easiest way. And then once a month, so basically every fourth video or so, since I do this once a week, so once a month, I do a request. And that's part of how the channel can continue. Okay, so what is Grafana about? What is it about? Is it just a visualization? The open and composable observability and data visualization platform. So this is, I think typically people use things like Prometheus and I guess these other ones for scraping. I don't remember what Loki does. I thought that was like distributed tracing, but who knows? Coding. Let's try Loki coding. A log aggregation system. So maybe that's similar to Prometheus. At any rate, these are sources of data for from Grafana's perspective. Oh, Loki is log aggregation and Prometheus claims to be metrics monitoring. Is that true? Okay, yeah, metrics. All right, great. So, and then Grafana's job is to display it. So I'm sure you've seen lots of Grafana dashboards in your life. They are very colorful. I'm not sure to what extent the colors actually help versus make nice screenshots, but they exist and you can use them. I don't know if this also supports, so usually I see Grafana as dashboards. I don't know if Grafana also supports like querying your like doing subqueries on the data. I assume they may they? I don't know. I guess you can do like a thing here. Okay. All right. So that's Grafana. Similar to Sec. I know I've heard of Sec. I forget what its deal is. Centralized structured logs. So, this is maybe just log aggregation. I don't know. Send logs and traces from any language. So Sec captures the logs. So usually that means the way these log capture systems usually work is that there's some agent running on each machine or each VM, and they just have some endpoint they send logs to. There's a little bit more to it than that, and you wouldn't want to do it naively, but that's more or less the thing. And then I guess Sec provides some sort of querying functionality. GCP Cloud Logs. I forget what the logging tool in GCP is. Maybe it's just cloud logging. I can't. That doesn't work if I'm already in Google. So this is what cloud logging. No. Anyway, so logging and search is typically or is often a different tool. Here's a screenshot. No, I thought that would take me to the. Oh, I'm on Google, not DuckDuckGo. Okay, forget it. But anyway, this is what the logging tool might look like. And then you will also want to visualize that. That's often a different tool. It may be that Sec or Seek or whatever you want to, I don't know how they pronounce their thing. May be that they also have dashboards. And in fact, they seem to here. But in theory, those could be completely separate things. And Grafana, I think, is just focusing on handling the visualization. Go into the code. What is the code going to tell us? I don't know. Bra to ML. Bra to ML is, I think, a Tamil is a configuration language. .drone.star. I don't know what these things are. I don't know what bra is. I don't know. This is some sort of configuration, some go build thing with some commands. This maybe looks like a build system. Golang. The bra command. Brilliant, ridiculous assistant. It's something about command line utilities. I don't know what it's for. Init, initialize the config template, run. Okay, this is, none of this really matters for Grafana. I don't know why I'm going down this rabbit hole, but I don't know what these things are, so I'm just curious. So drone is something that maybe has pipelines. Maybe drone is a like a pipeline system. CI/CD. Drone. Brah. Yeah, brah. I told Claude to call me bro. And so far it's never really come up. It doesn't seem to call me that at all. Okay. So these are just things in the Go ecosystem. I'm not so up to date with the Go ecosystem. So I thought I would just check out what those were. Okay, Grafana. It seems to be mostly Go on the back end, and then what was the front end? TypeScript. Go. And then Q is like this weird language. I don't know how you would describe it, but I think it's based on one of the internal Google languages that's notorious for being very difficult. And I think it's for kind of like parameterized configurations or something. Let's see what it's actually being used for. I guess we can't search for it. First of all, I can't spell language correctly. Q. Can I search for files called I don't know what the search is for files by name, but we are importing things. We're importing star.q. But from where? I'm just going to clone it. So take that. That's going to take a while. Okay, so they're using Q for something, who knows what. The TypeScript is going to be the front end, and that's probably where all the pretty stuff is, right? Is that more important than the back end? Package, I think, is where Go puts their stuff. Local is probably not cool. Kinds and hack. I forget what people use hack for. There's this mix-in stuff. Emails. E2E is maybe end-to-end tests. Here's q.mod. And then we also have apps and some config for Vim, some Husky stuff. They seem to be using all the things. This is it seems to be a well-funded project if they can afford all of these services. And it's used by lots of people, so I would hope it's well-funded. I don't even know if it's what entity develops it. I assume they have some sort of organization project this big. Their thing is just called Grafana. I'm not going to dig any further right now. Okay, so under apps, they have advisor, alerting / notifications, dashboard, folder, IAM, should be permissions. Maybe this is for using on the cloud. Investigations. Investigations might be for like debugging, like an ongoing debugging report. I'm going to just open it just for fun. I don't know what a playlist is. And secret could be all sorts of different things. I don't know why folder is an app. I guess I'll open all of these apps. I don't know where, I don't know if that, like, for example, the dashboard app is the main app. It doesn't seem like it's positioned in the code that way. But under package, which I believe should be the Go stuff, this directory contains the code for the Grafana backend. And then there's a contributor doc, which is nice to see. Guidelines everyone should read. So there's a style guide. And then good practices, all that stuff. Good. That's good. I'm not going to read them. But that's cool. Storage is probably interesting. Let's see. I set up Grafana locally, and it reads from Postgres, but I don't think I set up Postgres to store the data, so I'm not sure where it stores data. Semconv is maybe something semantic, maybe some sort of I don't know, like linting. Promlib, who knows what these things are? There's some services and also a server. And test. It's good to see test. I think I opened up storage. There's also web on the back end. Infra, kinds, login/social, middleware. I'll just open all the things. We're not going to get to all the things, but I just don't know enough about where anything is that I'm just going to open so much stuff. A lot of it looks plausible. API machinery is probably not important. I think that's a Go idiom to have an API machinery folder. Kinds has the dashboard, the library panel, and the public dashboard. And here's a Q file, which is what I was looking for. So Q has this is like kind of like a Go-ish import style. We've got a name. Its maturity is experimental. It's like describing metadata about the thing. We've got some sort of dummy schema. And it's a CRD, which might mean it's Kubernetes related. And something about lineage. And this has some sort of specification, which again is kind of Kubernetes-ish. But that just might mean they both come from a similar background. Let's see, we have an ID, a UID for the dashboard. It can be generated by anyone. It's just some string. 8 to 40. It doesn't specify that it's like a UUID. I don't know. It says unique. I don't know. Unique. I don't know if it's unique to the installation or unique to the world, like a global UUID. But basically, this looks like configuration, and a cutesy thing needs expert review. So this does seem to be generating something. I'm not sure quite what. Let's look up Q again. Q language. I can't remember if it's like Borg config or if it's like what's the other one? I forget the name. Validate, define, and use dynamic text-based data. I guess this is for generating configuration. Is that the idea? Introduction to QLang. Like every blog post, you have to scroll down to the middle to find out if there's any actual content. Okay, they're calling it a configuration language. I'm like 90% sure it's based on Google. Q seems quite different from DAL. I guess DAL is another configuration language. Q is Turing complete. Is Turing incomplete? Okay, that's good. Okay. Let's just ask the AI. Oh, BCL, GCL. GCL is what I was thinking of. Okay. It draws its influence from many languages. Its main influences were BCL/GCL internal to Google. I had thought, I'm not positive, but I had thought at Google we were moving away from GCL. We still used it, but it was like kind of unwieldy and surprising. But maybe Q solves some of those problems. Anyway, that is what Q is for. I think what it's doing is it's generating different like configurations based on templates, possibly for things like generating, this is the configuration for the develop cluster. This is the configuration for the production cluster. Maybe the configuration in US East 1 differs from the configuration in US West 1 or whatever. And so there's a lot of overlap between those things. And you can have like a templated based system, but the idea of like a language like GCL, I think, at least originally, and it's also used for other things, is to, you have files that you want to generate, and there's mainly just the data that varies, and so you have a language that it makes it easy to specify generating a config file given the varying data and stuff like that. This is something about a Kubernetes hack. This is a hack folder for Kubernetes code gen scripts. Oddly, a hack folder seems to be standard Kubernetes development practice. So this is for doing something with Kubernetes scripts, updating code gen scripts. I don't know what a Kubernetes code gen script is. Boilerplate go make aggregator. OpenAI code gen. We've got some boilerplate. Let's look at the boilerplate. Nothing. It's just got some licensing identifier as AGPL. This is creating certs, I assume, OpenSSL certs. And what? I don't know exactly what it's doing. Maybe it's for just setting up a cluster. As many off-the-shelf patterns as possible. So you go to go root, update codegen.sh. Let's look at that one. So we're going to do some stuff, go into some directories, pop the directories, and codegen run is going to generate code for blah, blah, blah APIs. Oh, okay. I think this seems to be like you have APIs in some description, and maybe this is generating the code for them. Maybe mildly similar to something like how protobufs work, but they're using gen open API, which I guess is the file that I looked at, open API. So they're generating something. I'm not quite sure what, but a fork of the original gen open API helper in Kubernetes code generator. Well, let's look at that. Used to implement Kubernetes style API types. The code generators can be used in the context of a custom resource definition to build native version clients, informers, and other helpers. Okay, so for example, you have some sample controller. And then you can generate some code. Okay, so I think this maybe is a little bit like, this is all Google stuff. I think this is maybe a little bit inspired by protobufs. My reading on the Go ecosystem in general is that they redo a lot of the Google patterns, but they kind of do it on their own. So I think that's maybe where the Kubernetes people got that and what they're doing, but I'm not sure. So in that case, it would like generate maybe like stubs and handlers from your API description to handle like HTTP calls, and then you would implement what those calls are actually supposed to do, or something along those lines. Here's a Grafana mixin. What does it do? I have no idea. Whoops. This is a work in progress. They aim for it to be a good role model for alerts and dashboards eventually, but it's not quite there. It's a set of configurable, reusable, and extensible alerts and dashboards based on the metrics exported by Grafana. So Grafana is going to export its own metrics. It can also be used to visualize the metrics that you have, but it will also, I guess, export metrics, and you can visualize them with these dashboards. I don't really know, why it's a mixin or whatever, because we haven't seen, I guess, the main code. Here's E2E. I don't know what E2E is going to be. My original guess, I think, was end-to-end tests. And I see a thing called run suite. Run-suite, which I'm guessing is a bash script. And I don't know what a Cypress config is. And we're switching on something like debug. These are different maybe modes. Debug, benchmark, enterprise, echo dev mode. Command, Cypress open, enterprise suite equals base name of args2. And we are joining, so we must have forked somewhere or like split up into, for key and map, do blah, blah. I don't know. Maybe it's not joining in that sense, but yeah, test files. So I think this is end-to-end tests. I feel sufficiently satisfied. Here's q.mod. Will this tell us anything more about what they're doing? No, this is some module name. All right, that brings us to apps, which is where we started, except for package. So that raises to me the question of where's the TypeScript? And I think GitHub should support TypeScript, even if they don't support Q. And it's in public/app. And also scripts. Okay, so I don't think we've looked in public. Yeah, that's true. All high hopes files are one line. Very often. Okay, so here's public. This is, we have dashboards and app, but also lib and img, which must be image. Gazette here, I think, is a third-party tool. No, maybe not. How about Grafana? Yeah, I don't know what this is. Something, some tool. Well, I guess, did we open it? We'll open it. We'll look at what it is. And did I open app? Yeah, I opened app. Okay. And then there's like views. This is presumably views in the sense of like models, views, and controllers. The vendor, I'm going to guess, is vendored. Dependencies. Maps might be actual maps. SAS could be all sorts of things. And then we also have fonts and emails. I never care about emails, but maybe I'll open it. Swagger, and then is the, what is now OpenAI. Sorry, Open API. No, what is it? Open API? Yeah, Open API. It never occurred to me how almost a clash that is with OpenAI. Okay, and so where do we start? I guess I'm going to start in the TypeScript. We have an API that has clients, you can create a base query. Okay, so my first thought here is why are there clients on the front end? And I guess the answer to that might be that the front end's job is to scrape a bunch of data sources. So these might be clients for things like, Postgres or whatever you're visualizing. But I don't know. Again, we have folder. So I recognize these as the apps, provisioning, playlist. I guess we'll look at the apps no, we'll just pick one at random. Endpoint gen. So this is some endpoint generator. Inject endpoints. URL checks, params, pretty, blah, blah, blah. Delete check. Get check. So build mutation. What are they importing from base API? Like, I don't know if this build.mutation stuff is their own stuff or if this is some existing library. But this looks like they're generating, I guess, endpoints, and maybe checks are part of the advisor, and you can like do CRUD operations like delete them and delete them and update them. Here's base API.ts. They are importing API utils and some React stuff. So maybe this is React stuff that I'm just not familiar with. So let's get out of advisor and look at folder. No, let's look at dashboard. And endpoints to see what their endpoints look like. They don't have as many. Get search API response. And get search API response. Yeah, so this seems to be like, again, trying to generate REST APIs, which seems like a reasonable idea. So that's API core, has actions, components, context, copy, crash, history, hooks, internationalization, navigation, reducers, and some other stuff, including Monaco, lifecycle hooks, core, table model, time series 2.ts, and store. I have a feeling that I want to look at time series TS and store.ts and table model. Do I also want to look in actions? Actions has cleanup and index. That's not very actiony. What about reducers? So this is like, seems mostly for navigation, like nav model. And root.ts. No, stop doing that. Okay, and then I guess I want to look at core.ts here because I don't think I opened it up. And this is just importing stuff and exporting stuff. Okay. So what about time series 2.ts? We've got this match series override. And you give it an alias or regex, which is a string, and you give it a series alias, which is another string. And if you didn't pass in your first argument, it returns false, which is kind of like a poor man's type checking. And if the alias or regex, the first character begins with a slash, so I guess it's maybe like it's supposed to be a path, then we're going to call like string to JS regex. Otherwise, we're going to return whether these two things are equal. The two arguments are equal. I don't know what that's for. Get fill gradient. You give it an amount. And if there's no amount, you return null. And otherwise, you return we're in what, TypeScript? So I think this is just a list with two dictionaries, One has opacity 0.0, and one is 1/10 of the amount you sent in. And I don't think that there's any interpolation between them, but I guess maybe the interpolation is defined elsewhere, and that's enough to define a gradient, is the two endpoints. You can update legend values. That's not so exciting. Here we go. Time series. Deprecated. This class should not be used in new panels. Use data frame and helpers instead. Okay, but where do I find that? I will follow this advice, but let's look at the old time series. It's sometimes kind of interesting to look at what failed. I mean, maybe it didn't fail. Maybe there are other reasons, but this is the old way. So first of all, data points has an any type. That's a little bit unusual. And then there's the string as an identifier, some index stuff, field index label. So data frame index represents the index of the original data frame in the query response. I don't know what that means, but something linking it to a data frame. And then the field index represents the index of the field. Okay, so I think you just have some data frame like, I don't know, like Postgres metrics. Maybe that's the data frame. And then the field might be like CPU utilization. And that will be some time series. And I think they're just recording those things. And then alias in color, which I guess is kept with the time series, which is, I guess, like different than you could imagine a system where the time series just has some ID, and then you have some configuration that says what that color that ID is. So that in that case, the color would be kept separately from the time series, like in CSS. But in this case, it seems like potentially you can set it in the time series as well. There can be a value formatter, which might be things like, print only the first 2 decimal places or something, and then a legend. So this is just conceptually, I would think of a legend as something that goes with the plotting of a time series. So I guess in this sense, like what they're calling a time series, for me, that would mainly be the data points, but this is also including just like drawing information, like the legend and tooltips and all that stuff. Okay, so I will think of this conceptually as like a plotted time series. And there can be lines and hidden series. I don't know what the hidden series are for. And then I don't know what they're keeping in dashes, bars, points, etc. I don't know if the points are like, I assume that the dashes and bars are maybe like the essentially references to or the graphics pieces, the actual dashes that make things up so that you can draw them easily or something like that. And similarly with the points, like an R. I think like point just describes a point. How do I scroll here? Do I have too many? Okay. I don't know. But I assume that's some sort of point object or some sort of bar object goes in those fields. So where did they tell it? Anyway, that's my guess. So where did they tell us to go? They said, don't use this, use data frame and helpers instead. Let's look at the TypeScript version. This looks promising. We have packages, Grafana source. So we have PKG package and also packages. And I don't know, I assume that the main difference is that packages is for TypeScript. Does that just mean like TypeScript libraries? Grafana front-end packages. Okay. So yeah, I think these are just like whatever it is, like JavaScript packages or Node packages. I don't know how the JavaScript ecosystem works. But for example, here's Prometheus, presumably for ingesting stuff from Prometheus. Grafana data. Oh, these all look, this is maybe where I most want to be, I guess, now that I'm thinking of it. Grafana schema, Grafana SQL, Grafana UI. Okay, so going back to the data frame, I can see now that this is more complicated. We have an interface. It says alpha. Maybe that means it's an alpha mode. And we have a field state, and it includes things like what's the display name. Calcs is cache of reduced values. Okay, so these are, I guess, this is probably pretty generic. We've done some work on the, like processing the original time series, and we're like going to cache those values. Some numeric range. And what is this for? My guess is that that's mainly for, because that's easy to compute, but my guess it might be for setting like the y-axis. Like how tall is this ever going to go is maybe something you want to be able to have a fast lookup of. And then something about scoped vars for templating a series index. And basically referencing a larger data set that can span multiple data frames. Okay. So this seems like a more mature version of the time series 2 that we saw, which is good. And then what else do we have? A field config, which you can extend with plugins, including a display name, description, etc. So this is for an individual field, I guess, of a time series or a data frame. And so where's the data frame itself? So bot says, I was thinking the same of that, but I wonder, doesn't it normalize the data on the y-axis? I don't know. What do you mean by normalize the data on the y-axis? Does it normalize it? I don't know if it normalizes it. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more what you're thinking, like what sort of operation normalization would be. But I think in general, it will just graph. So I'm thinking in terms of like the mathematical graph. Maybe you're thinking in terms of like drawing it in the like drawing it with the graphics card, because I think in that sense you'll need some normalization, because the actual pixel of the top, let's say the top y value, is fixed, and so you have to like recalculate you have to calculate the coordinates of the pixels based on based on whatever the actual data values. I think maybe that's what you're saying. Maybe that's not. I'm not sure. At any rate, why don't you let me know, and I'll look at it in a second. And then so we have this just field indexes, data frame DTO, like a data frame, but fields may be a field DTO. And then a data frame looks really simple. It extends query result base. It has a string and a list of fields, and it's the fields that are complicated. I guess that's reasonable, but we don't, for example, cache anything like the number of fields. We do cache the number of rows. But you're just saying they were thinking of the graph value. Yeah, the graph doesn't end up shooting off the screen. Yeah, that's true. There's some other stuff here. I just happen to have here a plot. This is not a Grafana plot, but here's an example of a thing that is a time series. This is SPY. But so something has to somewhere the software has to compute that this is the top row of pixels, I guess really here, and down here correspondingly. But within that, there are considerations of like how good does the graph look. So I think I should be able to change like the plot somehow, maybe to a log plot. Like there are different ways of displaying it. And so this is, as you zoom in, zoom out, it seems like helpful to know what the max and min of the data here are. For example, here the min is this 593, but if I zoom in, it becomes here, and so they've rescaled the plot so it's taking up more. So I can see the individual points more. If I really zoom out, like if I look at maybe, I don't know, 12 months. Like this, for example, is a poorly rendered plot. I can zoom in and I can zoom out. And so there is this scaling to figure out what the top and bottom and the bounds are. But there's also like, you want it to be visually understandable and stuff like that. So I think that's some of the thinking that goes into that. Okay. All right. So that's field state. That's cool. They're recording a lot of information. All of it seems important. The raw field values are just a value, whatever values is. It's T of bracket. So, and T is any. So there's not any like fancy packing of the values. All of it is very fast. I guess that's mainly just because computers are fast these days. So that was data frame. What else do we want to see? Store.ts is nothing. It's just some store. Export default store. Why? What did it do? I don't know. And this tree index is not so cool. Nav model. Oh, I'm in the maybe a different. I'm in a different browser window than I thought. So we'll get rid of nav model. Well, I guess we'll look at it quickly. We have a title and some other stuff. Nav index reducer. Redux Toolkit uses immer.js as part of their solution to ensure that state objects are not mutated. It has an auto freeze option. Okay. So this may be some of the things you can navigate to, like teams, correlations, users. No, maybe not. I don't know. We'll ignore navigation for now because we found cooler stuff. Root, this seems like this is mapping URLs. No. This is like setting up reducers and maybe some plugins. And these, I don't know. They look like they might be, some of them look like they might be pages, but these are just importing libraries. And I'm not going to really look at the navigation anymore. Let's go back to the packages. Here's Grafana Prometheus. And we have some config, and it should mainly be calling a Prometheus client, although we have dashboards. So maybe each like backend thingy defines its own dashboards. That would kind of make sense. We have a query builder and a query cache and typings. I'm guessing typings is just like type information. Language provider mock. I don't know if that's, I don't know if they mean like a human language. PromQL. I guess prom, we saw like PromLib or something. Prom must be Prometheus. So I guess they have some Prometheus query language. We also have query hints, a results transformer, and stuff like that. Metric find query. Data source, data query. Okay. And then we have things like migrations, image, and configuration and components. Let's take a look at some of these briefly. Yeah, many reducers. I guess that's life in Redux. Okay, so for dashboards, we have Grafana stats, Prometheus 2 stats, and Prometheus stats. These are JSON, which is maybe how they define their dashboards. I don't know if these are... We have a core Grafana history. These might be dashboards for the developers of the Grafana Prometheus integration, as opposed to dashboards that are used when you look at Prometheus data, but I don't know. Our URLs include things like docs, These are like info URLs. The panels, we have Palette Classic is the color. DSGDev Prometheus. I'm guessing this is for the developers, just based on the name. But at least we get to see a configuration for dashboard. It has the type of interpolation. Line interpolation is linear. I guess that means if there are 2 points, they're going to draw a straight line between them. The line width is 1, which would be just whatever normal is. And then thick lines, I guess, are larger than 1. Point size is 5. I don't know what scale distribution is. This might be how do you do scaling as you zoom, and it may be linear scaling. We have some thresholds and so on. Matcher properties. Time from null, time shift null, samples appended. Okay. And here, somewhere we have an expression. This is, looks like it might be a metric. Prometheus TSDB, head samples appended total, job equals Prometheus, indexed at 5 minutes, it looks like. And then they're going to iterate over that and sum them up. So this looks like a running, like a cumulative sum. See if we can find the corresponding title. So this is somewhere in a grid of, it's a dashboard, so there's a grid of graphs. Yeah, I don't know where the title of this thing is, but I assume it's something cumulative. Okay, but here's Query Builder. There's lots of code, too many. So this is some parser. Presumably for the PromQL. Parses a PromQL query into a visual query model. It traverses the tree and uses a sort of state machine to update the query model. Yeah, this is kind of fancy. I don't know if they rolled this themselves. The core Grafana history. What does this mean? What does it mean? Like this is the old version? And this is maybe more of a less fancy parser. It looks like it's using regexes instead of like proper parsing, and the new one looks fancier. Okay, so just some parser. I'm impressed at the amount of work that's gone into all of this stuff. Aggregation operations. So get operation definitions. Something about a histogram quantile. I don't know why that's the default. I guess that makes sense. Does it? For metrics data? Yeah, I guess so. Some sort of histogram. And it's going to have, these are like the definitions of the quantiles. This is like the 5-number summary, maybe. Default parameters, prom, visual, blah, blah, blah. And then we have create function, histogram average. Or maybe that's not the default. Maybe these are just different functions, and that just happened to be the first one. Histogram average, histogram count, etc. So this is all like config stuff, I guess. And they're setting something up to, I guess, call Grafana and query it. But this is well done, and there's lots of code. So I don't think we have the time to really look at everything carefully. So here's query cache. I guess I'm mainly wondering what exactly they're caching. So it's a query cache of T, anything that extends a supported query type. So I guess they're caching the they have one cache per type. The request target data query request, i.e. a specific query reference within a panel, identity, the string that is not expected to change, and signature, the string that is expected to change, upon which we wipe the cache fields. Okay. So this is expected to be used within a panel because I guess you're doing the same query maybe over and over. And there's a part that is expected to change and a part that's not expected to change. And when it changes, I guess you need to redraw and everything. You need to clear the cache. I think is more or less what's going on. Typings, I just see something about Jest, which I think is a testing framework. We're still in Prometheus. I don't know what a language provider is. And I guess I don't know anymore after looking at it, so I'm just going to move along. We can just, for fun, let's look up the prompt, what the prompt query language looks like. How about Prometheus? What? How about some screenshots? All right, I don't know. Generate an example of a Prometheus query in PromQL. That's DeepSeek. Average by service endpoint. I guess this is maybe like a group by rate. And you pass in 2 rates. Okay. There's a bunch of these metrics query languages. I don't know how to decide which ones are good and which ones are not good. I have no reference point. I don't know if people keep defining that. I don't know if people keep making new ones because we haven't converged on the right way to think about metrics queries, or if they create new ones because each way of designing your metrics retrieval system kind of suggests its own way of querying the data. I don't know which of those is true. At any rate, I'm kind of Prometheus out, and I want to see a little bit of other stuff too. And all of this stuff is so, this is a lot of work. I don't know why I had it in my head that Grafana was like a relatively small operation, but it's not. It can't possibly be. They must have a lot of funding, as I said, because it's up to date and there's a lot of code and it's well written code. I assume. Let's ask DeepSeek. How is Grafana funded? Grafana. I'm guessing they have a lot of corporate sponsors. Commercial. Oh, okay. VC investments. Okay, so maybe hosted. Is that it? Grafana Cloud, Grafana Enterprise, Grafana Pro. Okay, that makes sense. And it's like a freemium strategy. Yeah, that makes sense. I just never really saw people talking about Grafana Enterprise, but it must be a thing. It must be a thing that people use. Okay, so here's Flame Graph implementation. And what is TSX? That's different from TS, right? A flame bearer project. The component logic is based on logic from the flame bearer project from Mapbox. No, not file. Did I have an extra space in there? So they just, as is you are allowed to do, they copied some open source stuff. Although I'm always curious about licensing. Some ISC license. Blazing fast, flame graph. Use the online version. So this is from 7 years ago. It's got a different license, and I think that that Grafana is a. Oh no, we have the ISC license. Okay, so I guess you can just do that. Although here. We have the AGPL. Right. And I think there's no license file here. And I assume that legally what this means is that the license and copyright information in the header of the file have to take precedence over the license that's in the root of the project. And I'm guessing that means that all of the contributions of the Grafana people to this file are still licensed under this license and under this copyright, but I'm not positive. So let's just ask Gemini. So I don't think Gemini. I don't think this is set up so it hears my voice. I think I keep trying this and it keeps not working. Test. No, okay. So I'm looking at Grafana, and this file is copied from another repo. It uses the ISC license and has copyright attributed to Mapbox. So I'll give it the file. No. Yes. And then I'll also link it to the license. Although there is a licensing.md file. Okay, so they say these are under Apache. These are under the original licenses vendor, and then this stuff's under MIT. The main repo is licensed as AGPL. And the repo also has other licenses. And so my question is, do contributors to the Grafana flame graph implementation assign the copyright of their contributions to Mapbox? And two, is it correct that the contributions to the flame graph file are under remain under the ISC license, but their contributions to other files are under AGPL or Apache or MIT, depending on the folder. Because it seems like that would get really complicated if you're a business. But what do I know? So Gemini will think about that for a little bit. Anyway, here's the flame graph. The flame graph has data, a range, min, and max, some matched labels. You can set range, min, and max. I don't know if that means you can set it or it's a set. What happens if it's focused? I guess this. So again, this is a flame graph doesn't really have focus. A chart of a flame graph does. That's doesn't matter to me what they call it. I'm just trying to think mentally. Remind myself that this is not just the chart; it's also a chart that has like a windowing environment or it's a displayed chart, or for example, text align on sandwich item, etc. If you haven't seen a flame graph, I assume most people have. They use them for like optimizing and stuff. Oh, no. And it will have, you run some optimizer or whatever, and it shows you which calls are taking a long time. Which means that there should be some like labels for each of the things. So I guess the sandwich is maybe describing the stacking up and down. On focus pill click, I'm guessing that the pill is the graphical part of that corresponds to a like a method. And we've got some levels callers, some profile ticks, like the number of ticks in the profile, like this, I assume like the CPU profile you're doing, and some setters for those things, and the common canvas properties. And they're just generating HTML for the canvas. We've got this flame graph canvas thing, and I don't know what that is. See if we can find flame graph canvas. Here. Is that what I was looking at? No, it wasn't what I was looking at. Okay. Just making sure I wasn't going mad. Okay. And so what do we have here? We have more sandwichy stuff, I thought. On sandwich. So sandwich seems to be like an operation, maybe that changes the stacking and unstacking of things. Range max. We also have profile ticks, just like the flame graph non-canvas. And we have the data. But presumably something is different. I don't know. But we have this use flame render. And we have a reference to it underlying canvas, I guess. And we also have color schemes and directions and stuff like that. And on graph click, we're going to have some callback that, among other things, we're going to compute the pixels per tick and convert pixel coordinates to bar coordinates, passing in some X and Y with offsets and so on. Okay. And then on mouse event, we also do some stuff. But it seems like maybe the canvas, maybe a lot of this is registering callbacks around the canvas, and then the canvas itself is doing something, is like the React implementation of canvases. We've got context menus and tooltips. Okay. Seems reasonable. You've seen that in VTune. What is VTune? Oh, is that a like tuning in the sense of it's a profiler? Yeah. Cool. What is Gemini saying? So contributors to flamegraph.tsx do not assign the copyright to Mapbox. The contributors retain the copyright to their own contributions. Instead of assigning copyright, they grant a broad, perpetual, and irrevocable license to use, modify, and distribute their work. Yeah, and the copyright notice only applies to the original code. Any new code is copyrighted. Is that said in the file? I don't know if I believe that. And how would you like note that? Okay, so ISC license is compatible with the AGPL. I guess is part of the answer. And then for other files, contributions to other files are licensed under the same terms for those files. The default is blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to ask Gemini as a follow-up. How do you know? Wait, what? This one. So how do you know this is true? How would someone possessing the source code know which contributions to that file are copyrighted to that box versus someone else? Maybe you just have to, maybe you just need the Git repo. And so, yeah, so vtune is a provider. Okay, so where are we? We have Grafana data, which I think we looked at. Is this the thing with the data frame? Go, go, go. Well, if you're freezing, I'm leaving. This is more, no, Grafana schema. Grafana SQL. Why is this not working? Okay, Grafana UI. This is UI components. I don't know how deep this goes. But I guess we'll ignore UI for now. Grafana schema. We have common, raw, and veneer. I don't know what those mean. And then Grafana SQL. We have like SQL expressions, data source, and components. So much. So common, schema, a bunch of Q files, including a heatmap.q file, a geo.q file, data query gen, data source, and variables. I don't know what the schema is. Is this like a, maybe this is, I don't know. So for example, the data source has an auth type, a default region, a profile, and something about alerts. And the common has a data topic. A topic is attached to a data frame metadata and query results. Okay, and a data source JSON and a data query, which has a data source, which is, I guess, optional. For mixed data sources, the selected data source is only on the query level. For non-mixed scenarios, this is undefined. Okay, and then there's a whether to hide. If set to true, the Grafana will filter out the responses associated with this query before returning it to the panel. And then there's a query type and a ref ID, a unique reference ID. And some base dimensions config, which has a bunch of fields, and a scale dimension config. So this is assumed for scaling the panel, since we saw we saw that in one of the configurations for a dashboard. So I'm wondering if this schema is it's like a schema for the layout of the dashboard, as opposed to like a data source. But I'm not really sure. We have map layer dimensions. I don't know if it's a map in the sense of a software map or like a visual display of geographic places. We have a frame geometry source, filter data config. I don't know. Heat map calculation mode, graph draw style. Yeah, bar alignment. I think this must be for like a schema for the dashboard itself. And we have things like a line config, like the color, what interpolation style to use, bar configuration, fill color. Okay. So that's all cool. I feel like that's what that must be. We'll move along a little bit faster. For some reason, Firefox is not responding. Components. This should be for connecting to SQL, like Postgres or MySQL. Confirm modal, data selector, query editor, or at least on the front end. Data source, get DB, dispose, blah, blah, blah. On query change. So this is probably just some text field for editing the query. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to look at the dashboard a little bit. And then I'm going to move on to look at the back end a little bit. Here's the back end Firefox thingy. We haven't really looked at all of the dashboard stuff. Let's see what else. Before I do the back end, let me take at least a quick look at the front end. In dashboards, we have this JSON stuff. Default is maybe like when you sign in, this is what you're going to see. Something about a browser, a time zone browser. I guess you get to pick a time zone. Welcome to Grafana. Okay, yeah, so this is like a welcome screen. Scripted. Complex scripted dashboard. This script generates a dashboard object that Grafana can load. And maybe this is just like an example of how you would do it for if you wanted to handwrite a dashboard or something. Scenario to ID, random walk. Okay. And then a scripted template and so on and so forth. I think those are kind of like examples, but I don't know. Lib, I don't know what Monaco languages is. Custo, init, load custo. Monaco. Something about Microsoft. Well, whatever it is, it's some Microsoft thing that fully featured code editor from VS Code. Maybe it's like adding support for Grafana stuff to VS Code or something. I don't know. Here's the image folder, and they seem to actually just be images. Yeah, icons and stuff. Cool. And Gazetteer, I have no idea what this is. We have airports.geojson. Is GeoJSON a thing? It will render. I did not know about that. So this is some JSON stuff that renders like a map. It's copyrighted to TomTom. What does the code look like? It's got this stuff. Feature collection, properties. I'm guessing this is just some JSON standard for encoding geographic information. GeoJSON is an open standard format designed for representing simple geographic features along with their non-spatial attributes. It's based on JSON. I don't know if it's valid JSON or not, but at any rate, apparently, GitHub will render it. And here's USA states. And I don't know what Gazetteer is, but maybe this is for, I guess it's for things like if you want to have have a dashboard that has a map, they need to somewhere represent that map, and that's where that map is represented. Although this is maps, and it's also GeoJSON. So I don't know what the difference between this and Gazetteer is. And this is OpenStreetMaps and TomTom and Microsoft Azure. That's not what I meant to do. Okay, so that is what I meant to do. So we have Gazetteer usstates.json as opposed to GeoJSON. I don't know. But they're different. Example with style. What is this? The Bermuda Triangle? Okay, so that's the Bermuda Triangle, I guess. And then SAS. Oh, SAS is like a style sheet thing, right? Why would so the Bermuda Triangle? I think is just there as a joke. If you mean that, why do they need maps? I think it's just so you can have maps in your dashboard, like this. I don't know if my I have I'm checking my Grafana instance to see if it's actually running. I haven't used it in like a month or months, I would say. Yeah, it's running. And I guess I can show you guys this. I don't think there's anything secret here. I just randomly added a new dashboard. I think this data comes from nowhere. So that you can add a visualization. I've actually not ever played around with Grafana. You can use mock data. I think that's what that is. This also seems to be mock data. And then I guess the somewhere I was seeing folders. I was curious about the folder app. Can I add new dashboard, import dashboard, new alert rule? No, did I click save? I meant to click go away. I can add a library panel and I can import a dashboard. I guess a panel means it's shared with other dashboards. That's fine and good. And I guess the folder means somewhere I saw a folder. I don't know where it went. New data source, configure new data source. Okay. Here's what I want to do is create a Grafana dashboard that shows which US states have the most what? Have the most state parks by square area of the state park divided by square area of the state. Chickens, the most chickens. Chickens would be good. I don't know where to get that data. Let's see if it's possible. Let's ask DeepSeek. Paste. Have the most. What's going on today with my computer? Crazy. Is it my computer or is it just Firefox? Okay. I'm going to start a new chat with Gemini. Maybe Gemini will let me edit which have the most chickens. An important part this task is figuring out where to get chicken data. That's a good point of the hens planner. This way we'll have a planner evolution. Yeah. All right. So here's. Wait. What? So they claim that this is a dashboard. You can copy, go to import. Okay, so let's do that. But how? Don't you give me a copy icon? Copy contents. Okay. Here it was. Here's folder. So I guess this is what the folder app is up to. So I should paste it here. And then what and so in theory, this is what the map is for. Although, why is it so dark? Is it because I have dark reader? But even then, I don't see any variation. And I don't know if there's a way, is Grafana telling me that there's an error? I'm not sure. I think I can just give. I'll tell everything is black. Oh, I thought I'm on a different account. Okay. It doesn't want me to do this. All right, let's see if the chickens is any better. Chicken population by state, quick stats, NASS USDA.gov. It wants me to get an API key. That's not bad. I'm not going to do that, but it seems good. And I'm out of Gemini Pro stuff. So I guess I'm going to leave it at that. But in principle, this is what the map is for, is that you can create a map-based, whatchamacallit, a map-based dashboard. And you can have things like, how many, if you're Apple, like how many iPhones are we selling in each region or whatever. Even jokes. Yeah, I could go to my other account, but I'm not going to. Just because it'll be more time and more effort. The Gemini, they really are. That was like 2 queries, maybe 3 queries. What did I ask it? 1, 2, 3. The Gemini, they've really cut back on the number of free queries they give you for the Pro model. SAS will ignore maps and fonts. I guess we don't really care about. And then what does that leave us with? That leaves us with the PKG, the backend. And what what is here? So things that I see that are obviously not in the front end include client auth middleware. That's a common way to handle authentication, because authentication needs to be everywhere. It's nice to have middleware to handle it for you, so that all the endpoints don't have to handle it separately, for example. We have APIs, although we also had APIs in the front end. Whatever an expr is, and extensions, iFaces. I don't know what an iFace is. I think in Emacs it's a font. 1 second. All right. And tests. And also web. Why is there web? Context binding macaron. Render. Router. Renderer is a middleware that injects a template renderer into the macaron context, enabling context.html calls in the handlers. Okay. And they're using single flight, which is a way of like batching requests. I don't know what macaron is. Go macaron. A high productive and modular web framework in Go. Okay, it's some web framework. Storage in the backend has legacy SQL, secret, and whatchamacallit. As we transition from our internal SQL store towards a unified storage, we can sometimes use existing services to implement a Kubernetes compatible storage. And they've got dual writer. I'm guessing dual write writes in 2 places. I don't know what that's about. What is this? Semconv is open telemetry semantic conventions. So this is some, I guess, like configuration for their telemetry, I assume. Registry. This is probably a service registry, so that the various parts of the Grafana can know who to talk to about what. Background service registry. Yeah, this seems to be what it is. Promlib is Golang Prometheus stuff. And that's fine. And then we have services, including access control, which should be like authorization, like access control lists and stuff. Kimball, test, API, database, dual write migrator, evaluator, resolvers. I don't know. There's no README. I'm going to guess this just access control. We have API keys, auth n API, auth n, auth z. I don't know what the difference between like something like access control is and auth z. They have RBAC. So the role-based access control. Cool. And you can do things like say, this is authorized to use maybe in proc is probably in process, and this is allowed to, I guess, use the gRPC service or something. And we have a public dashboard service. Maybe that's just there to find out where to get the dashboard or something. And whatever star is, it's got some API. I don't know. It's all very complicated. Not overly complicated. There's just a lot here, and I'm running out of time. So one thing I haven't figured out is where they store their stuff. We have a tree. I'm in store, services/store. What kind of tree is this? A nested tree. We're doing some locking. We can get the root. I'm wondering if this if this is a tree in the sense of like a B tree that you would use for like a key value store or what. It's not obvious. And I think I'm going to ask the AIs to help me out with what's going on with the back end and what the distribution of labor is for this. Like, for example, I don't know why there's a web in the back end. We have web.go, which is the web server. Oh, I guess maybe maybe this is just the web server, and the thing that the web server is serving is TypeScript. As opposed to like a node server. I don't know. Infra, this should be their stuff. So db.go. So this is database transaction stuff. Looks like they're using a SQL database. I'm guessing that it's called infra. I'm guessing that this is for their infrastructure. We have a SQL builder. And they have things like feature toggles, which I'm guessing are like toggling feature flags and so on. The kinds, we've seen some of these before, but I'm just going to kind of plow through and look at the documentation and ask the AI about what the distribution between the back end and the front end is. They have some sort of bus. I'm guessing this is kind of like an event bus. Handler func defines a handler function interface. Message has type any. Because this is Go, we can publish a message and we can provide a bus. Is this like a handwritten bus, or are they using a or are they using an existing library? I don't know. It seems like they're making their own, and it's maybe just using like Go routine sort of things. There's publish, and we're going to get the type of the message using reflection, and get the parameters, I guess, using reflection. And we're going to look for listeners, and if one exists, we're going to build up the right thing to send the listener, and we're going to call the listeners. And then we're going to do some like tracing, I think, using open telemetry or something else. And then we're going to, whatever span is, span is something from the tracer, and we're going to defer ending it. So once the function is done, this will be called. And then we're going to set attributes. That's just more tracing stuff. Okay. And then you can add listeners. So it's just kind of like a publish, subscribe. I don't know how they handle things like missed messages, dead letters, that sort of thing. And then here's an API server with the endpoints. Filters, request, response writer. What API is this? Create limited context, creates a new context, blah, blah, blah. So I guess maybe that what they're doing, it might be that they are defining the API somewhat in TypeScript, and then generating Go handlers for them, or something along those lines. Or maybe they're just defined in like open API config files. But it looked like the TypeScript was doing something to define APIs. Or maybe they're defined in Go, but we'll figure that out. Here's API itself. Admin users, admin test. These, I'm guessing, are kind of like handlers. Let's look at api.go. Register routes registers all API HTTP routes. So there's the Grafana admin, which would be like an admin panel, whether you're signed in, whether you're not signed in. Okay, so this looks like routes, auth views. So you have to be authorized. So to go to org new, which is maybe for creating a new org, you have to, we're going to call authorize in org with this stuff. And to go to teams new, which is maybe for creating a new team, and so on and so forth. Dashboard new, we're going to require that you're signed in, and we're going to pass in hs.index. What is HS? HS is the HTTP server. So .index, hs.index is what? Also, what is the TSX file? And let's just look up macaron. Extended syntax. Oh, TSX means it can contain JSX. Oh, wait a minute. So maybe Macron is not a Go thing. Maybe I was just looking at the Go like bindings for Macron. Maybe Macron is like a replacement for Node. Type safe CSS in JS with 0 runtime. Co-location, maximum safety, and productivity. The 0 runtime. See, new compile time, CSS in JS library with type safety. Okay. So I don't really know like what function it's serving, whether it's running on Node, whether it's an alternative to Node. In JS, what is macaron? And let's just ask what is macaron. Answer succinctly. Okay, so it's a lightweight HTTP server router framework for Deno, similar to Express for Node.js. Server/router framework. So it's handling routing, and it's for Deno, which is, I guess, you can think of as possibly a successor to Node. But aren't they also using React Redux? Maybe they're using React Redux for the reduction stuff, but not for the routing, but not like React Router. So I think that's maybe what's going on. So it's for server-side JavaScript. And Redux runs on the client side. I thought they were using React stuff. They are importing React. Okay, and so we have aggregator left. And so now I'm just going to ask, let's maybe start by doing a, or maybe Grafana system architecture. Front-end observability. Back-end plugins. How is the code base organized? Here's a useful question. I have no clue how to approach the Grafana code base. I would like to know I am not familiar with Node.js, Angular, Golang, blah, blah, blah. So it uses Golang for the backend and Angular for the front end. It's quite a large code base, hundreds of thousands of lines of code. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. An easy look at the Grafana architecture. Okay. I guess I can't use Gemini Cli either if I'm out of credits. But I can use Gemini Flash, right? I'll say, how does Grafana split tasks between front and back end? So this is just saying it primarily handles the user interface interactions, dashboards, visualization, user input, etc. Backend manages core functionalities like authentication, data source connections, query processing, alerting, and storing metadata. So when I set up a Postgres data source, is the backend querying the source? Okay, so all that's the standard way you do it. So why does Grafana use a Golang web server, a macaron, and also React? So on the front end, it uses React with TypeScript to build a rich. So how does macaron fit in? I'll just keep sending it this until I figure out how to configure it properly. So it says historically used macaron as its Go web framework for the backend. It's migrating to its custom. I thought macaron was a. I thought macaron was a JS thing. I don't think Flash knows what it's talking about. It's claiming. So let's look at Go macaron. It's a high productive. Okay, so maybe it is a separate thing. It looks like it's not related to the other macaron. Okay, and it seems to be actively developed. Maybe 3 weeks ago. Okay. So I guess it's using the okay. So it says it's using client-side JavaScript, which would make sense because it's using React. So that answers that question. There's a difference between they're not using the JavaScript macaron server. They're using they were using the Golang macaron server. And that explains why they're also using React. Hi, Tracker. What's the best? That's what I should ask it. That's a good idea. Give me a second, though. Let me ask these a couple more questions first. And here's Grafana apps. So let's go back to Or was it packages spelled out? Okay, okay. Not that. How about apps? Let's say dashboard. No, this is, I think, Golang again. Let's search for API in TypeScript. So what is this actually using? So I guess if we're using client-side JavaScript, then maybe this is just about knowing about the backend API so we can query it. But I guess I want to answer where. So where are the graphs rendered? Are they rendered in browser? They're primarily rendered in browser. They provide the raw data. Okay. They support server-side image rendering, for example, for alert notifications or PDF exports. Okay. So let me ask, we are dealing with Flash here. And I won't tell it to answer succinctly because maybe that's not what you want. It can be a rewarding journey. That was a mistake. I should have told it to answer succinctly. Understand the core concepts and architectures. Is solid of what it does. Dashboards, panels, data sources. No, we didn't do that. I mean, we were mostly ignoring alerting and plugins. We did see this other stuff though. It generally follows the following. Where to go? Web application structure, primarily Angular. I don't believe this. There is some Angular. Throw if Angular. Auto migrate Angular. So it looks like they used Angular in the past and migrated it, and then the backend doesn't go, and the database is used for storing things like dashboard definitions, etc. The data source adapters. This is how they connect to the backends like Prometheus, Loki, and so on. The panel plugins are how different visualizations are rendered or extended. The query engine, how the queries are constructed, etc. And then the alerting engine. Follow the developer guide. Include repo, build it locally, etc., etc. Trace the flow. So it's telling you to trace the front end and back end calls. Again, they don't use Angular anymore. They do have a distributed tracing system, so that tracing should be hopefully just a matter of like configuring it correctly when you're building and running it. And then there's Grafana documentation, etc., and make small changes. And as to whether they're well documented, they have a contributor guide, which a lot of people don't. And my guess is that it is well documented. Just traditionally on this show, we don't read the documentation. Blah, blah. Oh, I copied the same thing. I meant to copy a new thing. Is that right? Is that what I did? Yeah. Plugin development. That's a little bit of a cop-out because the plugin is so self-contained. I mean, if you want to, a cop-out in the sense that if you want to understand the repo itself, you can kind of do whatever you want in a plugin often. Public app, certain areas of the front end, like core components, often contain smaller reusable UI components. Fixing minor UI bugs is good. And it claims they actively tag good first issues. So that's good. Cool. I am going to ask what the database does Grafana use? So there is this plugins directory. What was it, public core or something? app/core. Lodash. What is Lodash again? Is that log stuff? Something about arrays. A JavaScript library which provides utility functions for common programming tasks using the functional programming paradigm. Okay. They have a profiler, and they have this store thing, which I'm not sure what it's for. Components is probably what it was thinking of. Animation access control, balancing loader. Breadcrumbs, close button. Let's take a look at the close button. How hard can that be? On click, nothing. Don't do anything. Is that right? Oh no, that's I don't know. The close button on click. What? Oh no, we're passing in props, I guess. That's going to configure those things. Why does it do nothing? I guess so you can configure it when you use it, as opposed to having a default operation. And then there's some styles. And it's just an icon button with a label that says close. So that's pretty simple. Animations, fade in. I don't know. We have some opacity for, I guess, different phases: exited, entering, entered, and exiting. And I guess those are enough to control the fade in. There's a state, and as the state changes, I guess you change the thing. We have on exited. I don't know what drives the transition itself. Presumably some sort of timer, but I don't really know how animations work. And Gemini Flash is claiming that they use an embedded SQLite database by default. And you can also configure it to use Postgres or MySQL. And we do have, under storage, we do have SQLite. We have this unified storage thing. They have Parquet. Parquet is like a column store, like an Apache column store thing. They also have SQL. The Unified Storage projects aims to provide a simple and extensible backend to unify the way we store different objects within the Grafana app. It provides generic storage for Kubernetes objects and can store data either within dedicated tables in the main Grafana database or in a separate storage. Okay, so I guess it's configurable. What is federated? Stats client. I'm not really sure what this is doing. It's got something about SQL stuff, resource clients, and legacy getters. Just for fun, let's look at Parquet. This package implements a limited Parquet backend that is only useful as a pass-through buffer while batch writing values. Okay. And then Proto. Search Proto. I don't know. Okay. So it seems like it's configurable, but probably the one I have is running the SQLite, I would guess. Now, where did my chat go? Maybe here. So Tracker's saying learning AWS and cloud basics, especially monitoring and dev. Still, why do you have quotations around your things? Are you a bot, Tracker? Or are you asking me to ask the AI this? But we can, I mean, I don't know. There was like IAM. I think they probably do have cloud integrations. We have AWS URL, CloudWatch. What is CloudWatch? Is it some cloud watching data service? CloudWatch. Monitoring capabilities through the CloudWatch network monitoring. So it's some network monitoring tool, and you can use it with, you can visualize it, I guess, with Grafana. We never really saw what was in IAM. Okay. I just write the chat and correct it. Client ID, client secret, but where is this? No. Where did IAM go? Maybe this is their own implementation of IAM. We have service accounts, single sign-on, common, and legacy. I'm guessing, oh, no, here we go. IAM dot. This looks like a Kubernetes stuff. But maybe not. I don't see. Plan your IAM integration strategy. So I think that they mean for it to be agnostic. They say an identity and access management client. Access to external systems. Consider the need for machine-to-machine communications. But it doesn't tell me, at least in any quick way, like who they integrate with. But there is Amazon managed Grafana. All right. I think with that, I'm going to call it a day. We have seen Grafana. We have learned many of its mysteries. And it's a huge amount of code. More than I really expected. But I think we saw the big hits. We looked at the front end code, like how that how they manage data frames or time series. We saw some of how they do configuration. I'm not really sure exactly what all they do with the queue files, and the back end is seems to be like a mostly pretty straightforward Go server. I'm not entirely sure what they're doing with code gen and queue, but let's ask the AIs that before we totally go. in the Grafana code base, what is Q used for? And also, what is the code gen stuff about? I wish they would chill out with things like the powerful configuration management. I feel like I'm talking to like a salesperson half the time. Open source data validation. Yeah. So for validation and schema definition, it helps define rigid schemas for various Grafana objects like dashboards, panels, and data sources. Okay, so this is for defining the Grafana objects themselves as opposed to being used for generating schema stuff for like some Postgres integration or whatever. I guess really wouldn't really need to know your SQL schema at all. It just needs to know what query to run. This ensures that configurations adhere to specific rules and constraints, reducing errors, etc. Okay. And for configuration management as well. And reducing boilerplate. Migration of Grafana objects. Tools like Qmon leverage Q to manage Grafana dashboards and panels. You can convert Grafana JSON into Q format for easier management. And you can also update existing configurations. Okay. And it enables a schema-first approach. So all those sound good. This sounds like nice things to have. And then code gen is for automating code creation. Yes, but which code? Based on predefined schemas, templates, and patterns. It's used to enable the schema-first approach. Okay, so I guess that they maybe write the schemas essentially in Q. Those generate the schemas, and then it's also used to generate the code in both the front end and the back end. Okay, so they're generating both the TypeScript types and the Go structs. Okay, that makes sense. It would have been cooler to know that at the beginning, but that's how it is. You can always take a second look at the Grafana repo and play around with it. Take a look at their developer documentation. I suspect it's really good. And it seems like a cool project if you like Go and you like TypeScript and you like to visualize things. I suggest checking it out. Thanks for joining me on this exploration, and I'll see you again soon.